Good afternoon. My name is Joel, and it's our pleasure to welcome you all to our Smart Money Moves Saving and Budgeting for Retirement webinar. Now, let me introduce you to our speakers for today, Doug Roberts and Tim Stuckey. Doug Roberts joined Guidestone in 2015 after spending 10 years as financial advisor. He currently holds a certified financial planner designation and an MBA in finance. Doug is a senior relationship manager and currently serves our university clients, as well as our family services segment, including children's homes, retirement homes, pregnancy centers, and camps. Doug and his wife, Erin, have been married for 20 years and have two boys who are 17 and 15. Doug also serves on the deacon board and the finance committee of his local church. Tim Stuckey is a part of the Guidestone Retirement Solutions relationship management team. Tim serves a variety of our ministry partners from all over the country, including children's homes, retirement homes, and Christian universities and schools. Tim joined Guidestone in 2022 after working in other financial service companies for 8 years. Tim holds a bachelor's degree in economics from the University of Georgia and a master's degree in personal financial planning from Texas Tech University. Tim and his family are active members of their Southern Baptist Church, where Tim serves as a deacon, Sunday school teacher, and chairman of the stewardship team. Before we get started, I wanted to let everyone know that you'll have a chance to submit questions to our presenters by typing them into the questions tab in the control panel located at the top right side of your screen. You can send them in at any time during the webinar, and we'll answer them as many as we can get to during the Q&A section, which will be during the last 15 minutes of the webinar. We'll do our best to get through as many questions as we can during that time. But let's go ahead and get started. Doug, let me start by passing it off to you.
Joel, I appreciate that, and Tim and I appreciate the gracious introduction. I would like to take a moment too before we get started just to give a shout out to Mr. Tim Stuckey, who recently passed the Certified Financial Planner examination. And that is an outstanding feat, especially considering he has two young children and one more on the way. Well, Tim and I are excited today to talk about smart money moves, and really what we want to do is give you some nuggets that you can take away that keep you on your retirement journey and keep your retirement journey on the right path. And so we've got about 30 minutes, but we're going to try to dive as deeply into these topics as we can. And I'm going to start off by talking about the importance of planning ahead. And then Tim's he's gonna talk about a word that we don't always like to talk about. One of those 6-letter words starts with a B, budget. And then I'm gonna shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit about how and what we should be doing to prepare for retirement. And then Tim's gonna take us home with some action points and some next steps before we get into that Q&A session. So I get this question often: why do we plan ahead? Why do we need to be thinking today about something that's not going to take place for 30 to 40 years? And that's a great question. And really the answer is, I like to think about retirement planning in a similar way as I think about vacations. Tim, my family and I went to Yellowstone last year, or we were going to go to Yellowstone before it got flooded out. But in planning for that, we blocked off a couple of weeks of time, and we decided what route we were going to take to get there. We made sure that the cars had their oil changes and the tires were good, and we made sure that they were filled up with gas, and had my navigation set up. We had our snacks for the road, and so we were really ready for the trip, how we were going to get there, what path we were going to take. And so there weren't really many surprises along the way. But if we wouldn't have done that, and if I would have just jumped in the car without my GPS, if I would have just taken off driving for Yellowstone, don't think I would have gotten there as quickly or as safely as my wife would have liked us to. And so retirement planning can be the same way. If we don't have a roadmap, if we don't have a strategy and a plan, then we may or may not get to where we're wanting to go. And we might hit some bumps on the road that we hadn't planned for. And so the reason that we plan ahead and the reason that we talk about this is because we want to increase our likelihood for success. So we want to talk about taking small steps today that have a tremendous impact on our finances both in the short term and the long term. So Tim, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you can talk about all things budgeting.
All right, great. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And it's a pleasure to be here today, being able to talk a little bit about some very important topics. And we are going to start off with budget. So how do you create a budget? Maybe what is a budget and why is it important? So we talked about it a little bit already, but here it is again. We're going to talk budget. So you might have heard it many times. You've probably even used a budget before, but let's talk about why it's important and then how to create this budget. So if you know who Dave Ramsey is, then you might have heard before, but he says a budget is telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. And so the important part with a budget, just like all this, is about making a plan. So how do you make that plan? Well, why don't you start with understanding both your income and your expenses. So to do that, you're going to need to review your finances. Now, if you're married, please get together with your spouse and discuss this. Maybe set aside a date night to get together and have a meal and talk about money. Might not be your ideal date night, but utilize it to talk a little bit more about money instead. And use this time to review your income. So how much do you take in each month? And then how much do you spend? So you can review your last several months of expenses if you would like to, or just kind of think through where is your money going and break things down into essential and non-essential categories, and then also savings too. So we're going to talk a little bit too about this rule. It's a 50-30-20 rule. Now this is a good, it says rule, but it's really a guideline. Try to target these numbers. So 50% for essential expenses. Now what is an essential expense? Those are going to be things you can think about, like your housing, your insurance, your medical, your food, utilities, things like that. So that would be what an essential is. Now, and it might not be the same for everyone, but for a lot of people, myself included, we view giving and tithing as an essential expense. So include that with your essential expenses as well, and make sure that you have that number included within that 50% on essentials. Now, your non-essentials, those are going to be those things that you might need or want, but you could still live without them if you had to cut them out. So think about maybe new clothes, eating out at restaurants, entertainment, items of convenience, stuff like that. And then try to put away 20% for savings. So we're going to talk about savings in both retirement and in a general form of savings. Another great rule would be to don't buy stuff you can't afford. So it might sound pretty straightforward. Yeah, if you don't have the money for it, don't buy it. But there's another catch to this too when it comes to not buying things you can't afford, because if you have a credit card or access to more forms of debt, you could technically buy something by going into debt to purchase those things. But I would caution you in doing that, because if you still have to purchase on credit, that means you can't afford the purchase at the time. So try not to go into debt buying these things that you can't afford, especially those non-essentials.
Tim, that's a great statement, and this kind of idea really had a profound impact for myself and for my wife when we were first married. I grew up in a household that didn't budget, didn't talk about smart money moves, and bought things they wanted because they thought they deserved it, whether it was new shoes or a purse or a fishing pole. Then I heard someone say, if you can't afford it, you don't deserve it. And that just changed the way that my wife and I thought about money. We began to budget for things that we needed and budget for things that we wanted, and we didn't buy something without trying to save up for it at first. So in all seriousness, I know I made fun of the word budget before, but even to this day, 20 years of marriage, we use a budget. We use a simple Excel spreadsheet, but we look each month and track all of our expenses for that month. So budgets, in my opinion, Tim, they just give us the freedom to spend our money the way that we want to.
I agree. There's a certain freedom found in a disciplined approach. So that's good. So next we're going to talk about an emergency savings account. So this is going to be very important. So hopefully I want to pay attention here and kind of talk more about the emergency savings account. So emergencies can take all sorts of forms. You might think immediately about something dangerous happening to yourself or a loved one, but then there's also things that are kind of more like rainy days too. Maybe the water heater goes out, your car breaks down, something like that. It's an expense that you weren't expecting to have. Well, how are you going to cover that? And that's what we want to talk about here, how to cover that and what you should be saving. So when I talk about emergency savings account, I like to first start off with making sure that you have at least $1,000 put away to cover an immediate expense. So prioritize saving that first $1,000. Now, we mentioned Dave Ramsey earlier. This is a thing that he talks about as well, would be touching on or keeping that first $1,000 away. And then you need to build out the rest of your emergency fund. So once you have that $1,000, and then work towards targeting 3 to 6 months of your essential expenses in emergency fund. Those essential expenses being those items we already talked about. Those are the ones necessary and required to live. It's not the fun stuff, but it is the stuff that you have to make sure that you can still have your house and have your food. So those are the things that you will need to save this money for. If you're married and both spouses work, maybe you can just target 3 months of expenses. If you're single or head of household, try to target 6 months worth of expenses that you can save in this emergency fund. This gives you that buffer if that something does happen. So one of those rainy day expenses, or bigger things like maybe you lose your job, or you lose your ability to work, or you have to take off time to care for a loved one. So these are the things that this type of fund would help you to have that buffer for if these things come up unexpectedly. Now, this is money that's also supposed to be immediately available for you, but also not too immediate that you're going to be tempted to spend it if you want to spend it on a non-essential item. So it's not for immediate spending, but it is to have access to if you need it. So we're thinking of ways that you can set this money apart. So it shouldn't be in your checking account to where you have access to it via your debit card right away, but it does need to be maybe in a separate savings account or in a money market savings account. Now, a money market is one of those type of accounts that you can have access to and still earn a little bit of interest on. And those are great offerings. And Doug, can you tell us a little bit more about those money markets?
Yeah, Tim, I was just going to give a plug there. If you've gone down to your bank or your credit union recently and maybe they have rates that are attractive, or maybe they're not as attractive as you think they should be, I think it'd be a great time to give Guidestone a call and take a look at our money market account as interest rates have gone up. It's no fun when we're trying to buy a car or buy meat at the grocery store, but when we have money in savings accounts and money market accounts, we're seeing much more attractive rates on those.
Yeah, it's a good way to kind of set your money aside so it is in a savings account, but then still earn a little bit on that money, maybe more so than your checking account. All right, so next thing we talk about is practicing stewardship. Now, stewardship is, I think it's a really profound word. Because we think about the word steward. A steward is someone that manages something that belongs to someone else. So practicing stewardship would acknowledge that we are managing resources that have just been put under our control. It's not necessarily ours at the end of the day. A Christian steward believes that our resources and our gifts, our money, our time, our children, our family, possessions, these are all God's. And this is what he's entrusted us to take care of and to steward. So we practice stewardship by managing well the things that we have been given. And all we've talked about so far, both creating an emergency savings account, creating a budget, things we're going to talk about in the future of this presentation. This is all part of practicing stewardship, understanding what your money is doing and where it is going. And then gaining perspective. Manage God's resources and build a solid perspective on money. Understanding what money is, how it can be used. It's a tool, and it is a powerful thing for you to both be able to impact your personal finances and the kingdom and those people around you. And then talking about a disciplined approach. So staying focused and disciplined, there's a discipline required to both making a plan. So when you think about, I need to put together a plan for my retirement savings, I need to put together a plan for my investments, a plan to pay off debt. These things are all a disciplined approach to managing your money. So understand what you contribute to retirement, how it's invested, and then sticking to that plan, regardless of market circumstances, regardless of the things that are going on in your life, as much as you can. So be disciplined in sticking to a budget. Be disciplined in paying off debt. Go ahead,
Tim. I was just going to jump in and say that's a great point. I think sometimes we live in this world where all of our focus is put on retirement and all of our focus is put on saving and thinking about the future. And that is incredibly important, but as equally important is also paying down debt. And so, Tim, what kind of strategies are out there when somebody might find themselves in a situation where they've got more debt than they anticipated or more debt than they wanted, and they're just not sure where to start, which account to pay down first? What kind of strategies can you give that that person?
Yeah, that's a great question. So really with paying down debt, there's two big strategies that really stick out as a way to tackle that debt. And the first would be a snowball strategy. So snowball would be, you make a small snowball and you push it down a hill, and the more it goes down the hill, the more snow it picks up, the bigger and bigger the ball gets. Well, the same idea can be taken with your debt. So start with a little bit of your debt and pay that off first. So that would be, maybe you have 3 different credit cards that you have debt on. Well, take the smallest balance and pay that off first. This is more of a behavioral finance approach where you're getting, a positive feeling from being able to pay off this debt. It's encouraging for you to pay off the debt. You get you get joy from paying this off, and it motivates you to continue on this path of paying down your debt. So pay off the smallest balance first, and then once you've paid off that balance, move to your next balance. Pay that one off, and then move to the biggest balance. And that doesn't take into account any interest rates that you're paying on this debt. You're just going strictly off of the balance that you owe, and working through that debt one by one to pay it all off. The other would be where you do take into account the interest rate. So you would want to look at, this would be going the highest interest rate first approach, where you would take all your balances and say, what am I paying on this? Well, I got this credit card that's 18% interest, or this credit card that's 14%, this one that's 12%. And then it would be taking on the highest debt first. So the theory there would be that you are paying less in total interest because as a percentage, you are knocking that off one by one based upon the one that cost you the most to have that debt. So those would be the two approaches that I would think about when you're doing that. Now, the snowball has been very effective for people because of that behavioral. So a lot of debt and spending and savings is about behavioral finance more than it is the economic aspects of it. So if it helps you to think about it that way, to try to get yourself to pay off a little bit at a time, get those smaller victories first, that's what I would encourage you to start doing, especially if you have multiple accounts of debt.
Yeah, and Tim, I would say there really is no bad answer to that, right? Whichever one you feel like is going to work better for you and your family, I think that's always the good answer. Tim, what about this idea of should I delay saving for retirement to pay off debt?
Yeah, should you delay saving for retirement? We're going to talk a little bit about your employer match in a little bit, but especially if your employer is offering you a match, you do not need to not take advantage of that. There is ways that you can do both of these things. You can still save for retirement while paying down your debt and making sure that you are not putting yourself behind the 8 ball there when it comes to saving for retirement, because a lot of retirement savings, it takes time to do that. And if you are not saving into your retirement account, then you are missing out on that potential for the money to grow and the more savings. So it is tough to think, oh, I got to pay off this debt and I need to save for retirement. That's a lot of money. But if you can put together a budget that helps you do both of those things, at least make sure that you're taking advantage of your employer match, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But then you can still save for retirement and make sure that you're paying down this debt. And I'll encourage you to try to do both. And then keep track of your progress. So none of what we talk about today is really going to do anything if you're not implementing the strategies and then tracking how it works for you. So there's plenty of ways to do this. There's different tools that are available. There's tools such as Mint and You Need a Budget, or YNAB. That's what they go by, YNAB. These two tools are both free to use. I think they might have paid versions as well if you'd like a more premium version, but they're available for you to help track your expenses and your income. And that is how you can keep up with your budget. This can be manual, so you can put them in yourself, or it automatically can link to your spending accounts to where it knows exactly where your money is going and you just match it and it keeps up with your budget for you. So these are two tools that you can use to kind of track your progress. There's more out there too, and I think some people might still use an old-fashioned spreadsheet as well. So there's plenty of tools out there to track your progress.
Yeah, Tim, I completely agree. In addition to my old-fashioned spreadsheets, I'm too cheap to pay for premium services, and so much to the chagrin of my 2 teenage boys. But my wife and I still use envelopes. We just use a digital form of envelopes called Good Budget. So there's, for whatever your appetite is on some of these different apps and spreadsheets, there's definitely something out there that you're going to find that works good for you.
Yeah.
So as we kind of switch gears from the budgeting and the paying down debt, let's talk a little bit about things I need to be thinking about when it comes to planning for retirement. What should be front of mind? What can I push to the side, and where do I really need to focus my attention? And I like to segment things into buckets, and I like to put them in buckets of what is in our control. Now, at the end of the day, the things that are on this far right, out of our control, this is what we love to talk about, and this is what we're going to see on the news, and this is what's going to stir our emotions. But at the end of the day, these are things that we just simply don't have much control over. Things like inflation, things like governmental changes, even things like when the Lord calls us home. Those are things that are going to happen. We just don't have much say about when or how much they happen. But the things that we do control are things like savings, how much money we save, and things like budgeting, how much money we spend. We also have control. We don't have control over Social Security in the sense of whether or not it's going to be there, which is a whole different presentation. But we do have control over when we draw Social Security. Social Security gives you many different options about when you can begin to draw that. We've got the full retirement age of Social Security, but then they let you take it early if you would like, or they even allow you to delay Social Security, and they even incentivize with additional bonus on your benefit. So those are things that we can control. One thing we can't control is the market returns, but one thing that we can control is how much risk we take on those investments. So we can control how we invest it, maybe not necessarily the return on those investments. And so in thinking about that savings, if we look at it in terms of money going into our retirement plan, for those of you, the majority of you on this webinar, you're most likely a participant of your employer's retirement plan. And it's important to understand how that retirement plan is set up and how it operates. Things like, does your retirement plan have a waiting period before you begin receiving employer contributions? Questions like, how much are you able to contribute to that retirement plan? And are you allowed to consolidate outside accounts? You might have an IRA, or you might have a 401k from a previous employer, and you're wondering whether or not that money can be consolidated into your employer's retirement plan. And the general question to that answer is yes, absolutely. You have the ability to consolidate those retirement accounts. And sometimes that can make it easier for you to track your progress. It can also make it easier for you to see where you're at, how much you've got saved so far, and how much you're continuing to save. And so I like to call that simplifying your finances. All right, and then when we talk about money going out of your retirement account, we want to make sure that when you begin to take distributions, that you do it in a way that ensures it's going to last you for as long as you need it to. And so sometimes it might even make sense to delay your retirement. Maybe you're delaying your Social Security distributions, or maybe you're delaying when you retire entirely. You might look at that and say, I need to wait a year or two. I'm not where I want it to be. And there can be some benefits in doing that. One of those I mentioned earlier, Social Security. Social Security is going to give you an 8% increase on your benefit for every year that you delay it beyond your full retirement age. And so for somebody that you might be in a situation where you feel like, I didn't save as much as I wanted to, I didn't get started as soon as I wanted to, and so you're looking for opportunities to increase that retirement income, and delaying Social Security can be a great way to do that. And also another benefit of delaying when you begin to take those distributions is it's less number of years that you're going to need to withdraw that money. But we always want you to remember that we're here for you. So we want to be an advocate, and we want to walk with you through this. And so don't feel like you're in this alone. We've got a retirement income estimator tool in your My Guidestone app that you can access that can show you different payout options of your Guidestone retirement plan based on different ages and based on different options that you choose. And you can always call into our Customer Solutions Center and speak to somebody who is available to walk you through that. All right, now saving for retirement always begins with contributing to your retirement plan. And this is a really important component of things that you have control over. I once heard a man say that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. And the second best time to plant a tree is today. And this is true for retirement planning as well. The best time to start saving for retirement is 20 years ago, but the second best time to start planning is today. And so if you feel like you find yourself a little bit behind of where you want it to be, or if you've just been putting it off, I meet with many people who say, I know I should have signed up for the retirement plan and I want to do it, I can't do it today. And so I would just encourage you, just start now, start somewhere and start small, but make the decision to start saving today. And so how do we do that, and how much should we be saving? And I love to answer this question by not answering it by saying it depends. And that's a little bit true. It's going to depend on your own unique circumstances. It's going to depend on when you got started. It's going to depend on how much you spend. It's going to depend on whether or not you're going to have a mortgage when you retire. And it's going to depend on if you have a spouse that works. But there are some general guidelines that get us pointed in the right direction. Most financial experts are going to recommend having somewhere between 8 to 10 times your annual salary saved when you retire. Now, for a lot of us, that might be hard to calculate or hard to figure out how much that's going to be. And so to get there, to get to that goal, you're going to hear it recommended that you save somewhere around 15% of your annual salary towards retirement. And this is going to include both your contributions and your employer contributions that get made to your retirement account. And now also, let me encourage you, if you're looking at this slide saying, I'm not even contributing to my retirement plan, there's no way that I can start doing 15% today, you might be right. So I would encourage you, just start somewhere, start small. You might begin saving 1% or 3%. And then every year, try to find an opportunity or a time to increase that by 1%. And whenever you get a salary increase, maybe a cost of living adjustment, or you get a raise or a promotion, those are great times to increase your retirement contributions without really feeling it. And so just consider that whenever you're looking at how much you're saving. Now, speaking of your employer's contribution, I know Tim mentioned that earlier, and we just can't emphasize enough the importance of taking full advantage of that matching contribution. So when your employer makes a contribution based on you making a contribution, we call that matching money. And matching contributions, it's a generous benefit that your employer wants to give you. They literally want to give you additional money if you make a contribution to your plan. And so they're taking ownership in your retirement planning journey. And if you're unsure if you have matching contributions, or if you're unsure of whether or not you're taking full advantage of that, we would just encourage you to reach out to your HR department, because they can tell you, here is what you're eligible for, and here is how much you're contributing. And so then if you're not taking full advantage of it, that's a quick, easy step to make sure that you're getting the most out of your employer-sponsored retirement plan.
Yeah, and just one thing I would add on that is that I work with a lot of people. When we see each other, we see our ministry partners, and we go and have these appointments with individuals. And I was at a children's home the other day, and somebody was telling me how they would like to increase their contributions, but they were going to wait until open enrollment to do so, because that's when they thought that they could. And that's a common misconception. You can change your retirement contributions. You can change your retirement investments. You can change whether you're doing Roth or pre-tax. You can change that at any time. So if you wanted to increase your contributions, you do not have to wait until open enrollment. You don't have to do it when you sign up for the plan. You can change your contributions whenever you would like. Just go to your HR, ask them, hey, how do I change the contributions into my account? They'll let you know, and then you can increase those contributions today if you wanted to. You don't have to wait.
Yeah, it's a great point, Tim. And the federal government also has a lesser known benefit for those middle income households that are saving for retirement. We call it the Savers Credit. And the Savers Credit is an income tax credit that you can receive based on your own household income and then personal contributions that you and or your spouse make to your retirement account. And this credit has the potential to reduce your income tax owed by up to $1,000 per tax filer. So if we dive into this a little bit more, this slide just shows us the maximum credit that you're eligible for based on your adjusted gross income. So we'll use, for example, the married filing jointly. If you're married filing jointly and your adjusted gross income is below $43,500, then you are eligible for the maximum credit, which is 50% of your contribution up to a $2,000 limit. So if you contributed $2,000 or more to your retirement account, that would be a credit of $1,000. And if your spouse also contributed at least $2,000 to their retirement account, they too would be eligible for their own credit of $1,000. And to claim this credit, you're going to use IRS Form 8880, and it's called the Credit for Qualified Retirement Savings Contributions. And just a little plug here as well. This credit is going to be in place through 2026, and in 2027 it's going to change a little bit. It's no longer going to be called the Savers Credit, it's going to be called the Savers Match. And so it's going to turn into a government matching program where they're going to make matching contributions into your retirement account based off of what you contribute. And that's just part of the new Secure 2.0 Act legislation. If you've got any additional questions about that, the IRS website really is a valuable resource. So www.irs.gov is a great place to learn more about that. So we've kind of hit on some different topics, making personal contributions. We talked about taking advantage of your employer's contributions. And let's also not forget that retirement planning is a marathon. It's not a sprint. So the longer that we do it for, the better off that we're going to be. And so we want to make sure that we're staying invested for the long term. And I know sometimes that can be difficult. That can feel very difficult when we see the markets fluctuate. It's easy just to think recently, as we saw inflation last year reach levels it hasn't reached in 4 decades, as we saw a 6-week period in 2020 when the COVID pandemic first happened and the markets were as volatile as they've been in a lot of time. We can think back to 2008, the financial crisis. We can even go back a little bit further. I know back in the year 2000, I was in my college years, but that was Y2K. And then we even had, after 9/11, we had the accounting crisis. So many reasons that concerned us with wanting to pull our money out of the market. And I would just encourage you that when we're thinking about retirement, this isn't short-term savings, this isn't college savings, this isn't savings for a house, this is retirement savings. We want to make sure that we're invested for the long term, and we want to make sure that we're taking the appropriate amount of risk so that we're not tempted to pull our money out when things don't feel like they're going our way. And always remember, nobody can time the market. Anybody that tells you that they know when to get in or that they know when to get out, the reality is that they don't, because if they did, they surely wouldn't tell you and I. They would keep that to themselves, and they would make themselves a lot of money. So they don't know when to do it. And so just remember, it's not about timing the market, it's about time in the market. And the longer that we're invested, the more opportunity we're giving ourselves for success. And so, Tim, with that being said, give us an idea of what some of our next steps are.
Great, yeah. So the next steps are to take action, implement your plan today. Like I said earlier, none of what we talk about today really matters unless we're going to take action. So if you've identified something today that you would like to take action on, I encourage you to do so. Maybe that's setting a budget. So maybe you have that budget meeting with your husband or wife, and you say, hey, we need to figure out a budget. We need to figure out our money. We need to figure out where it's going and how much we're bringing in, and then set a budget and then stick to it. So take that disciplined approach to managing your money, thinking about how you are invested, what is your plan, how you are sticking to a budget, and where your money is going. Make sure you're making your contributions to your retirement savings, trying to get up to that 15%. But if you can't get there, do something. Start small and then work your way up. And then especially taking advantage of that employer match if your employer does provide that match. And then track your progress. We talked about those different apps that you can use to help track on the budget. Also, in your Guidestone account, you can always keep track of what your account is doing, how it is performing, how you are invested. That's your My Guidestone account, just on our website at guidestone.org. And then consider opening a savings or investment account. So like we talked about earlier, for those money market accounts, maybe for your emergencies or either future purchases that you just need short-term savings for. Money markets can be a great place for you if that makes sense, just because you get that yield on the money, and then it is at least detached from your checking account. So it's a little bit harder to spend, but is available for you if you needed it. So that's what I would encourage you to do for implementing your plan. And then, we're here for you. Guidestone has been around. We've been helping our members since 1918. We have particular retirement plan expertise, especially in the nonprofit plan space. And then we are a nonprofit organization. That means that we take care of our members first. That's our priority. That is our main interest and focus. We don't have shareholders that own us that are competing for our interest. We want to think about you, our members, and our bottom line being your retirement security. And if you do need us for anything else, this is our contact information. And thank you for listening.
All right. Well, thank you both again very much. Thank you for walking us through such an important topic. Now we've got just a few minutes left to talk through some of the questions that were submitted during today's presentation. As a reminder, you can continue submitting questions through your attendee control panel. First of all, Doug, Tim, there was some confusion, I think, we were talking about Social Security and full retirement age or delayed retirement age versus someone may have mentioned the age 73 and required minimums. Can one of you kind of explain the difference in those two to clarify?
Yes, I sure will. Thanks for that, Joel. So Social Security, when we mentioned full retirement age, Social Security has a calculation that tells you based on your birthday, what's your full retirement age for Social Security. And for the majority of us, that's age 67. Now, Social Security also allows you, I mentioned the delayed benefits. Social Security allows you to begin taking your benefit as early as age 62. Now, if you do that, they're going to reduce your benefit by up to 25%. But then you can also delay taking your Social Security benefit, and they will give you an 8% increase for every year between that full retirement age and age 70. After age 70, they no longer give you any 8% increases. So you've got the opportunity, if your full retirement age is age 67, you find yourself still working, and so there's no need to draw Social Security, you can increase your benefit by up to 24% if you were to delay that to age 70. Now that's different than the required minimum distributions. Required minimum distributions is when the IRS says that you have to begin taking money out of your retirement account if you haven't done so already. And there are some different rules. For example, if you're still employed, you can delay your required minimum distributions from your employer-sponsored retirement plan. So if you're over the age of 73, then you can reach out to Guidestone and we can do that for you. And we've seen the age of required minimum distributions continue to increase. It used to be 70 and a half. Then they bumped it up to 72. Now it's 73, and it's going to increase again, but not for some time. So if you are not yet 73, that's the new age where you have to begin taking distributions if you have not done so already. Joel, does that clear that up a little bit?
Yes.
I'm sorry for the confusion.
No, that's great. Another question, you mentioned the 8 to 10 times your final salary being saved up. And one of our listeners wanted to know, well, is that assuming Social Security is going to cover part of your retirement and then that covers the remainder? And what if Social Security isn't there and doesn't provide that? Do they need to go above and beyond?
That's a great question, Joel. Yes, so we are making the assumption that Social Security is going to replace a portion of your income. And for the majority of us, Social Security is going to replace somewhere between 25 and 40% of our pre-retirement income. And so to make up the remainder, kind of getting into the details a little bit, if our goal is to replace 70 to 90% of our income, we've got Social Security replacing 25 to 40% of it. So how do we replace the rest? We do that with our retirement savings. And so the numbers kind of tell us if we're somewhere between 8 to 10 times that annual salary, that's going to make up that gap that Social Security falls short of. Now, we go under the assumption that Social Security is going to be there. And that's a very hot button topic, and many people have opinions about that. I like to frame things in the sense that we're going to look at what things are in place today. Currently, we have Social Security, and so we're going to go under the assumption that it will still be there at retirement.
Okay, great. So we do have also some questions about getting started a little late in retirement and maybe trying to make up some ground. And others are asking about investment options does Guidestone provide any help or any resources on the web when it comes to looking at the investments?
Yeah, that's a great question. We do have those resources. So we have resources on our website, both with education around your investments. And if it is available to you in your planning, we have an investment recommendation tool. You'll be able to see that on the website in your My Guidestone. Just go to your retirement investments and you'll see investment recommendation tool. If it's not there, then you can reach out to us and we can help you out. We do have other resources too. You can schedule an appointment. You can check with your employer and see if your employer knows who your Guidestone relationship manager is. And then that relationship manager can help you to get the information that you would need to help set up an appointment to talk about your investments. And we also have our advisors as well. So if you needed a more detailed conversation about your investments, maybe a holistic look at your investments and your total financial plan, if you have outside assets or if you have other needs as well to incorporate into your planning, our Guidestone Personal Advisors is also a solution for those that it makes sense for. So if you did need more information on our website, but then also the contact information is on the page here. That 18898-GUIDE number will go to our customer solutions team, but any of those customer solutions representatives, if they cannot help you, they know how to get you in touch with the people that can. So you can always start there if you don't know where else to go.
Okay, great. And you've mentioned some budgeting tools. Does Guidestone have anything in particular, any type of document for budgeting purposes?
Yeah, that's great. We do. It is through our website. Again, it's going to be called our retirement budget worksheet. So if you look through on the retirement on the website, there's a section that talks about your income, retirement income, estimate your income. There's a budget worksheet embedded in there. Now, it does say it's for retirement, but it can be used at any stage of your life, whether you're in retirement or not, because really what it is an interactive PDF that allows for you to calculate or list your expenses, and it kind of gives you an examples for you, so you'll know it'll jog your memory of what those expenses are, and then you fill in how much that costs for you each month. And then it also has a section for you to put in your income. So how much income do you have access to each month? And then those two numbers, the expenses and the income, net out, and you can see if your budget is in a surplus and in a deficient, or if it is balanced. So yes, we do have that available. It's called our retirement budget worksheet. If you can't find it through the searching around, there's a search bar on our website, then you can search for it there.
Okay, thank you. And just a couple of questions before we wrap this up. You had mentioned the money market, and we've had a couple of people that have showed some interest in that with questions, but they want to know if there are any restrictions on withdrawals or if the money has to be there for so long, or how is that even different from a retirement account?
Joel, that's a great question. So if you're opening up a personal investment account at Guidestone and putting money into the money market account, there's not going to be any restrictions on pulling that money back out. That's going to be money that's coming from your checking account. That's non-retirement money, and so you've got access to it. Now, because it's non-retirement money, it's also going to be taxable in that account, and that's Joel, I think you asked a difference. That's one of the main differences between a retirement account and a personal investment account. If we think about the taxes, because retirement, you're getting tax deferral in that account, and so there's not going to be any taxes owed if you did tax sheltered contributions until you retire. Now, if you're doing Roth designated contributions, you're paying taxes up front, and that money's coming out tax free. So that's one of the main differences. Another difference between the personal investment account and a retirement account is that the retirement account does have restrictions on distributions. Generally speaking, if you're still employed with your employer, you do not have access to your retirement account. And also, if you do have a retirement account, an IRA or a 403B or a 401k, and you take money out before age 59 and a half, you're going to be assessed with a 10% early distribution penalty. So it's a little bit more difficult to get money out of your retirement account while you're still working and while you're under age 59 and a half. Whereas the personal investment account is going to be, it's going to have much more flexibility to it than that because it's not a retirement account.
Okay, great. And someone had asked about limits on how much money they can put into their retirement plan or an IRA. And let me just answer that briefly. If you go to our website, guidestone.org/ contribution limits. You'll see those both for 403Bs, for IRAs as well. So I would love to take more questions, but we are at our 45 minutes for today. So I want to thank you again, say thank you to our panelists for today's webinar. And on behalf of Guidestone and our presenters, thank you for taking the time to join us in this conversation today. You will all receive a follow-up email with a recording of today's webinar. Have a wonderful day, and we look forward to talking with you again soon.